Whenever you're ready, Lucy. Ready? Good evening, everyone. Good evening. We're going to get this down. We're going to get it down. Welcome. We just came out of closed session. Any report?
Nothing to report, Mr. Mayor.
All right. Ventura County Fire Chief John Spikerman, would you lead us in the pledge? Give the roll call, please.
Councilmember Lister?
Here.
Councilmember Luevanos?
Here.
Councilmember Kavanaugh?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Judge?
Here.
And Mayor Mashburn.
Here. Everybody have an opportunity to review the agenda. Eddie.
Mr. Mayor, I have a couple of supplementals and amendments. We have a supplemental to consent 7 that should be in front of you. Just some clarifications on a few items. We have a letter that has been received on agenda item 8A. And then we are requesting continuance of 4A, one public hearing, and 4B, another public hearing. 4A regarding the project on Tapo Street is being requested to be continued to February 24th. And that date is in agreement with all the parties involved. And 4B for the project on Township is requested to be continued to February 10th, which has been agreed to as well.
Okay, thank you. Any comments regarding that? Councilmember Lister?
I move that all resolutions and ordinances presented tonight be read in title only and all further reading be waived.
Second.
Call for the vote.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. Is there anyone who has a declaration of conflict of any tonight's agenda items? No? Seeing none?
I need to abstain on consent item number, whoops, let me see. Consent item number 4, there's a grant to the Rotary Club of Simi Valley, which I'm a member.
Okay. Probably have to re-advise us at that time.
Okay.
Okay. Lucy?
Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, the first item on the agenda is 1D1, presentation of certificates of appreciation to outgoing members of the Simi Valley Council on Aging Executive Board. And Robert Martin is here for this presentation.
Good evening, Mayor Mashburn and members of the City Council. This evening, the City Council is recognizing 2 outgoing Council on Aging Executive Board members. As I call your name, please come forward. Shar Jakowitz. Shar has been a member of the Council on Aging Executive Board for 2 consecutive 2-year terms. During her tenure, She has assisted and volunteered at the Wellness Expo, helped organize the rummage sale, and helped coordinate the Arts and Crafts Fair. She has also helped chair the Bingo Bonanza events, including preparation and refreshments. That's not all. Shar has also chaired the COA dances, where she helped ensure the budget was adhered to, and spent several Friday nights welcoming dancers to live music and socialization. Most recently, Shar has served as the COA's treasurer, helping build the annual budget and monitoring the COA's expenses and revenues. She has represented the COA during city council meetings, to which she has provided an update on COA activities. If that wasn't enough, Shar has recently been volunteering as a long-term care ombudsman in the Simi Valley, helping ensure that the needs of the most vulnerable seniors in our community are met. Despite being busy in retirement with her many volunteer obligations, Shar keeps putting one foot in front of the other and marches forward, advocating for seniors in this community. Al Frenier. Al, are you here? Al's not here, but I'll read his. Al Frenier. Al has served as a Council on Aging Executive Board member for two consecutive two-year terms. While on the Executive Board, he has helped with various special events, including the Wellness Expo, Bingo Bonanza, and the Arts and Crafts Fair. He is a regular attendee at the Senior Center, being an active member of the Poker, Woodcarvers, and Builders Club. He is a dedicated volunteer who has been known to help out whenever he finds someone in need. Despite his busy schedule, Al finds the time to volunteer and be an advocate for local seniors. Thank you, Shar and Al. We deeply appreciate the exceptional service you have provided as COA executive members and to the seniors in our community. Thank you.
I look around the room and I see there's no one in here that qualifies to go to the senior center. But I tell you, that place is wonderful. It's great, and because of volunteers like you. And I would go over there more often, except I can't keep up with them. So, I mean, if you want to get exercise and get some brain work done, go over to the senior center. It's an incredible place, and it's because of people like you, Shar and Alan. Thank you very much.
It's really been a pleasure to be on the board for 4 years, and all the things I thought I could never do, I was able to achieve, because for the love of our seniors. And it's wonderful to be able to see our seniors enjoy their time, even if they come up there for their luncheon and their coffee and their donuts, and they just sit and visit. They have a place to go. And as long as they have a place to go and something to look forward to, I know they're going to be fine. So it's really, like I say, it's been a pleasure and an honor to be part of this. And come to the Senior Center and join us. Thanks.
Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, the next item on the agenda is 1D2, presentation of an honorary resolution to Annette Kramer for the Wayne Templeton Volunteer of the Year Award. And Robert Martin is here for this presentation.
Good evening, Mayor Mashburn and members of the City Council. Tonight, the City Council is honoring Annette Kramer as the recipient of the 2019 Wayne Templeton Volunteer of the Year Award. Ms. Kramer, it brings me great pleasure to invite you to come forward as I read your resolution. Ms. Kramer is here with her family, as you'll see with many cameras back there. Whereas Annette Kramer has been selected by the Simi Valley Council on Aging as a recipient of the 2019 Wayne Templeton Volunteer of the Year Award, following in the tradition of selfless devotion to senior issues and outstanding service to the senior citizens in our community. And whereas Annette Kramer has served Simi Valley seniors in numerous capacities, including serving as a Rendezvous Cafe Congregate Meal Program volunteer, advocating for some of the most vulnerable seniors in our community and ensuring that everyone participating in the program was met with a smile and a friendly hello. And whereas Annette Kramer has volunteered for various Council on Aging special events, such as rummage sales, wellness expos, and arts and crafts fairs, and has demonstrated how maintaining an active lifestyle can promote improved quality of life for seniors as they age. And whereas Annette Kramer has demonstrated unparalleled dedication to the Senior Center as a volunteer coordinator and ambassador for numerous years. Whereas Annette Kramer continues to serve as an integral part of the Senior Center team, ensuring that everybody receives the utmost customer service and attentiveness. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the City Council of Simi Valley that it commends Annette Kramer as a recipient of the 2019 Wayne Templeton Volunteer of the Year Award and expresses its appreciation for her distinguished services to our city's senior citizens and receives our recognition and our gratitude for all that she has done and continues to do in our community. Presented this 27th day of January 2020.
How about the whole council? I think the short time that we're taking, Annette well deserves the entire council to be down here for photo ops for the family. And would you like to say something? If I can get this off here, I couldn't possibly lower it.
All I can really say is thank you. I enjoy every minute I'm at the senior center. Like Shar said, it's just wonderful to be with all the seniors and see what all they can do. Thank you.
And a reminder, a senior at our senior center is 55. If you're 55, that's the age that you can go in. So I know we don't have anybody here 55 just yet, but it's right around the corner.
Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, next item on the agenda is item 2, public statements on appointments, special presentations, and informational reports. And we have no speaker card submitted for this item. Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, next item on the agenda is 3A1, appointment of Simi Valley Council on Aging Executive Board members. And Robert Martin is also here for this presentation.
Good evening, Mayor Mashburn and members of the City Council. 5 positions will become vacant on the Council on Aging Executive Board when terms expire on January 31st, 2020. The Executive Board advises the City Council on issues impacting seniors and conducts fundraising activities to support senior programs and facilities within the community. The Council on Aging conducted an election at its January 13th, 2020 meeting, and it is recommending 5 applicants to appointment to the Executive Board for terms commencing on February 1st, 2020, and concluding on January 31st, 2022. I invite the nominees to come forward as I call their names. Linda Allen, Susan Robertson, Pete Stong, The other following nominees are unable to attend this evening: Janet Plant, Jerry St. Germain. It is recommended that the City Council approve and the mayor appoint these 5 applicants nominated to the Council on Aging Executive Board. This concludes the report, and staff is available to answer any questions.
Mr. Mayor? Oh.
Go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, I move to approve and the mayor appoint the 5 applicants nominated by the COA General Membership to the Council on Aging Executive Board to serve terms commencing February 1, 2020 and concluding on January 31, 2022.
Second.
Call for the vote.
Motion passes unanimously.
All right, so now we should the official term. Stepping up and all of that.
Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, there are no special presentations for Agenda Item 3B, and there are no special information reports for Agenda Item 3C. Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, next item on the agenda is public hearings. This is the time and place set for public hearing on the consideration of matters as presented on this agenda. Let the record show that due notice was given as required by law, and an affidavit to this effect is on file in the office of the City Clerk. The reports of the staff relating to these matters shall be made as part of the record of this meeting. Speakers during the public hearings shall limit their comments to matters relevant to the item on the agenda and may be ruled out of order if comments are unrelated to the item. If you challenge in court any of the City Council decisions made here tonight, you may be limited to raising only those issues you or someone else raised at this public hearing. The time within the judicial review must be sought and governed by California Code Civil Procedure Section 109.6. Agenda Item 4C, a public hearing to approve the water cost of service rate study, make findings pursuant to Proposition 218, and consider adoption of a resolution establishing water service rates commencing in 2021. Ron Fitchiwaki is here for this presentation.
Good evening, Mayor Mashburn and council members. In addition to myself, we have Joe Deacon, our Assistant Director, available to respond to any questions. And we do have the pleasure of having a couple of members of the Callegas Municipal Water District here tonight. One is Tony Goff, the relatively recently appointed General Manager. And of course, Tom Slauson, board member representing Simi Valley and the current president of the board. Ventura County Waterworks District Number 8 is an enterprise fund that is funded by user fees that provide for the daily operation and maintenance of the waterworks system. Primary source of revenues is the service charges and commodity charges, which comprise approximately 91% of the total revenues. The current district annual budget projects total revenues at approximately $45.7 million, total expenditures at $45.3 million, a minimal surplus of $400,000. Expenditures include operating costs, salaries, supplies, expenses, including the cost of water, transfers to other funds, including the general fund and capital projects. The district's current water service rates were approved in November 2015, with the final rate increases going into effect this year. The water cost of service and rate study, or engineer's report, prepared by Reftelis, shows the nexus between the cost to provide the water service and the proposed fees to cover the costs, and recommends water service rates for the next 5 calendar years, beginning in 2021. The engineer's report was prepared using principles established by the American Waterworks Association's Principles of Water Rates, Fees and Charges, and Manual of Water Supply Practices. The study recommended rate increases in order to meet budgeted and projected operating expenses, which are projected to increase approximately 3.5% per year from $42 million this next fiscal year to $53 million in 5 years. The plan is also to meet planned capital expenses with the average annual capital expense at $5.2 million for each of the next 5 years. And also to fund and maintain a 90-day operating expense, which is the rate stabilization equivalent to 5% of water sales plus 1 year capital reserve. The complete listing of proposed water service rates are shown on Exhibit A, pages 13 and 14 of your staff report. In addition to the proposed rates outlined on the exhibit, commodity rates will be automatically adjusted to accommodate increases in wholesale water charges imposed by the Callegas Municipal Water District. Presentations regarding the proposed increases to water service rates were made to the Chamber of Commerce, the Council on Aging, the Budget Advisory Committee, and the 4 neighborhood councils. In addition, staff held a public information meeting on Wednesday, January 15th. Also, public service announcements were posted on the city's website, SBTV, and the city's social media pages. At the October 14th, 2019 meeting, the Board of Directors directed staff to initiate the 218 process by notifying all property owners served by Waterworks District of the proposed rate increase. On December 5th, 2019, a Proposition 218 notice was sent notifying all property owners served by the Waterworks District. The notice provided a complete and compliant Prop 218 notification and description of the protest process, and was sent directly to all 25,000 plus Waterworks District's property owner customers. At the conclusion of the public hearing, if less than a majority of property owners protest the rate increase either in writing or in person at this hearing, then the board may adopt new rates. If approved, the effective date for the initial increase is January 1, 2021, and annually thereafter for the next 4 years. As of 5:10 p.m. today, 1,083 written protests have been received, or approximately 4.3% of the total property owners. Finally, if new water service rates are approved, staff will develop a proposed rate assistance subsidy program and will return for the board's consideration. Rate assistance for low-income customers could provide a discount on water service rates to qualifying customers. However, a public agency must use funding from a source other than revenues from ratepayers. The Waterworks District leases properties to cellular network infrastructure companies to install and maintain cell antennas on water reservoirs. This revenue is non-rate related revenue and could be used to subsidize rates for low-income customers. Staff recommends that the board conduct a public hearing, and following the close of the hearing and considering the testimony made, make findings pursuant to the public process for increasing fees, and if a majority of owners do not protest, consider increasing water service rates commencing on January 1st, 2021. That concludes our staff report, and we're available for questions.
Thank
Mayor?
you. Could we have a reading of the proposed resolution?
Yes. Resolution number WWD-276, a resolution of the Board of Directors of Ventura County Waterworks District Number 8, establishing water service rates and repealing resolution number WWD-254.
Thank you. Questions of staff?
Mayor?
Sure.
I just wanted to clarify, on staff report, page 4, it says at the October 14, 2019 meeting, the Board of Directors decided to propose a uniform rate structure as opposed to a tiered structure for water usage, and I voted against that. I voted in favor of the tiered rate structure. I know that was the initial outcome, but it was a 4-to-1 vote. I would have liked that reflected in the record, and I'd like to clarify it now that I voted for a tiered water structure, specifically because it was going to save a lot of people, knows the difference of over 40 cents for Tier 1 rate users, as opposed to the flat rate, which is where now we are at, where we are having people that would be in Tier 1 subsidizing people in Tier 2 and Tier 3 through this flat rate. So I want that reflected in the report, and I want that reflected as a matter of public record, that I voted for tiered rates. I did not vote for flat rates because I don't feel that our residents should be subsidizing those who use more water. So I would like that reflected in the report.
Yeah, that's correct. I do recall that now.
Thank you. Questions?
I do have a question. So help me understand. I'm trying to understand the increase that's being proposed. And if I understand the table, these are the proposed rate increases, and then you will build in, or would like to build in, an annual increase based on the pass-through based on water charge increase. Is that correct?
For the commodity charges, the water usage charges, yes. Every year, Cayugas Municipal Water District establishes their rates for the next calendar year. And if those rates typically will increase our commodity rates, and we call it a pass-through. And it's part of our resolution, and it's a automatic pass-through.
So let me, I'm going to get to the assumptions in a minute, but let me first understand how that will look. So January 1st, they bump up the rates, or the pass-through is at X amount, and then you will notice residents, and then the rates become automatically increased, whatever that percentage is. Is that correct?
For the commodity rates, yes.
What is-
Commodity, I'm sorry.
Commodity, for the commodity of water.
Yes.
I understand. What has been the typical percentage increase in commodity?
Typically, it's been around 5%, which is, I think it's 10 to 12 cents per billing unit.
So I guess what I'm trying to understand now, if we look at the assumptions on what we base these increased rates, if we go to page 30 of our, of the report that was given, it gives us the assumptions that were used to come up with the rates, and included in those assumptions are 5% for imported water and 3% for recycled water purchases. So it sounds to me like they're already, increasing water is already built, increasing water rates is already built into these rates that are being notated. Am I misunderstanding that?
I don't know that you're misunderstanding it. Perhaps it's not clear, and in fact, prior to tonight's meeting, we did have a discussion with the consultant. And basically, the report that you have is somewhat two different phases. The first part is the financial plan, which develops what your revenues and expenditures will be and estimated out over the 5 years. And then the second part of the report is actually establishing the rates. So the 5% that's quoted or stated on page 30 of the general assumptions was used for planning purposes, for the financial plan portion of this report. In other words, they took all the expenditures, and they know that Cayugas commodity rates increase annually, so they put in inflation factors just so they know what our expenditures will be, but they offset that with an accompanying revenue in the revenue portion of the financial plan.
I understand. And so these assumptions, though, were used to come up with the pricing that has been proposed.
They were indirectly used for the rates, yes. The rates actually were part of a different calculations, as the consultant explained to us. So you have the financial plan kind of outlining the general revenues and expenditures. Then you have the rate portion of the study, which actually analyzes what they call the cost of service and how much each customer class, single family, multifamily, commercial, how much they should be charged in conjunction with their actual usage. I hope that helps a little bit.
I'm hearing you. Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
That's it for now.
Councilmember Luevanos.
Thank you, Mayor. I just have a concern. I mean, you mentioned having the nexus of cost of providing water services to the fees. And, what's being proposed is a flat rate. So have there been any issues with other cities having a flat rate and it not meeting the nexus test? Because if you're charging a flat rate, regardless of how much people are using, is that really a nexus? Are you really charging the amount that that people are using the cost of providing water services? If someone is using, a lot more water than someone else who's not using as much water? Does that still meet the nexus test?
We're not aware that it does not. I think that we did, in our research back at the end of the last calendar year, we did find a few other agencies that used a uniform rate, and we're not aware of any legal issues with regards to either the uniformed or the tiered rates in terms of the nexus study.
And were those for cities in California or?
Gosh, I don't remember. Do you?
If I can just
I believe so.
jump in on that. On the San Juan Capistrano case, they had tiers, and even though the city might be in the minority on flat rates, there's really no problem at all with the nexus on a flat rate. It's the tiers that are more complicated to justify. So there shouldn't be a problem with the nexus, the part of it.
Okay. My other question for you is about in the report on page 3, you talked about the previous water service rate study was conducted in 2014-15, and at that time revenues were not keeping pace with expenditures and reserves were declining. And that by that time, the reserves were below recommended operating cash flow reserve targets. Is that because the water cost had not been increased previously, in the previous cycle, to reflect the operating costs that were needed or the cost of providing water? Why was it below, or was it because the increased cost of the water was so great? Or was it both?
Back in 2015, when the current rates were established, there was some absence of passing on some of the commodity charges increases from Gallegos. So we were falling behind in terms of our revenue. At that time, I think we went 2 or 3 years, maybe even more, where the Gallegos rate increase was not passed on to our customers. And that's why we incorporate that now in our current rates, in our resolutions, et cetera.
So would that have been a result of the price setting or the rates that were set in 2010 or in 2015? Because it's every 5 years, right? So would it be a result of 2010 or 2015? Rates that were set?
It would have been as part of a rate study conducted in, around 2010.
Okay, so costs were not passed on in 2010, so that's why we fell behind in 2015. And then in 2015, were rates increased at that point?
Yes, 2015, we did have a 5-year program to increase rates for the next, up through this year, this calendar year.
Okay, and the rate increase in 2015 and the rate increase we're having now in 2020, is that comparable? Like the percentage? Like if it was a 3% increase in 2015, is the rate of increase comparable now? Is it more, is it less?
It was much more in 2015-16. That rate increase was substantial.
Okay, that
Because we
was a
were
result
catching
of-
up for several years.
Because of the
Yes,
failure to increase rates in 2010?
yes.
Okay, so this one will not be as painful as the 2015 increase. Is that correct?
We don't believe so.
Okay. Well, I'm a consumer, I'm speaking on behalf of the consumers here and our residents, so, every time they hear rate increases, they need to know the history of why we've set rates, what we're catching up on, what is the history of, the cost of infrastructure and the cost of providing the service. So our residents have a right to know that, and I just want full transparency.
So hopefully it'll be what you're saying. We would anticipate 2025 will be starting to level off. Am I correct?
Well, and that all
That would be
depends
the
on the
goal.
market value of the water that is being provided by Gallegos and the infrastructure and the pipe. And, there's a lot of things that could happen between now and then. But, the point is, are we planning ahead so that we don't have to pass on that expense at such a large rate to the consumer that it's a financial burden to them?
We'll be no longer subsidizing to where we have to play catch-up.
Right. Yeah, the takeaway is we're not playing catch-up with this rate adjustment like we were at the last one.
Okay, and I do have a question about the, again, the flat rate versus the tiered rate. In other cities, is there, one of the reasons for tiered rates in other cities, and I know it was already voted on, but is the disincentive, if you use more water, you pay more. So, people are going to spend less, just like time of use charges for electricity and things like that. People will wait until after 7 or 9 to wash their laundry because it's cheaper, right, for the electricity. Same thing with water. We've used this much water. So are we going to be tracking, or shall I say, will you be tracking, will your department be tracking, whether or not this flat rate has a difference in water usage, whether some people are going to use more water because it's a flat rate or some people use less water? I'd be curious to know what that data is or that information is, so that in 5 years' time, we can consider whether or not we want to stay with a flat rate or go back to a tiered rate. Does that make sense? Are we tracking that data at all, or can we track that data?
We can look into tracking the problem, or not problem, but one of the factors that we have to consider is the general water situation throughout the state. What was it, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, we were in a drought, so we were using conservation measures and using much less water. We are not in a drought at this time. Whether or not that results in people using more water, we'll monitor water use, but can we attribute it to whether it's uniform or tiered, whether it's just the fact that we have adequate water in our reservoirs? Is it attributable to many people converting their lawns and high water usage landscaping to drought tolerant? So there's a lot of factors. I'm not sure we'll be able to attribute water usage strictly to whether it's tiered or uniform, but we can take a look at some recent numbers and see if there's a way to pull that number out.
Well, I'm looking at it from a consumer perspective. The tier 3 rates that were proposed were $4.70, and the rate that the flat rate will be $4.04. So that's a difference of 66 cents. That's a big difference. And if I told my son, hey, the cell phone bill went down, and now you can have 20 gigs of data, he's like, yeah, he's going to go crazy with the data. And I don't know if that's the case or not. I hope that people will continue to be conservative consumers of water, but I don't know if that's the case. And when prices tend to drop, there's a market value on that, and that some people might say, well, you know what, I can get more gas, or I can use more water. It's not as expensive. The prices actually drop, because for tier 3 users, that when we have the tiers, it will drop. 66 cents per unit is a lot. That's a big savings that they're going to have. And even for tier 2 users, it will drop. So the tier 1 users are the ones that are going to really feel it the most. So that's my concern, and that's why I'm asking if we can track, if not individuals, but just the overall usage of water, to see whether or not that makes a difference. Because I know for some people it does make a difference, and the financial impact is a big one.
Yeah, again, we can track general usage. Whether or not we can get down to some of the components of what what causes that usage, I'm not sure. But we'll take a look at some of the numbers over this last year, see if there's something we can dig out from that, and then go from there.
Okay,
To clarify, tagging on with what Councilmember Luevanos is saying, each time we do an increase or an adjustment, that topic can come up, correct?
Sure.
The tiered or the flat rate?
Well, 5 years from now, whoever's here can make that decision whether or not to bring it up
But I
again.
mean, any council member can.
Oh, yeah, most definitely.
It'll be
Yeah.
something that can be
Yeah.
discussed.
Yeah, I think for these next 5 years, the majority of the board did make that determination for a uniform rate, to maintain the uniform rate that was established before. So, yes, a council member could bring it up at the next rate study or any other time, naturally, yes.
Okay.
May I just make one comment?
Yes.
I just wanted to reiterate, you did let us know that we can't use the ratepayers' money to subsidize low income, but we do have funds from cellular use, correct?
Cellular-
And those cellular contracts are usually for like 25 years, or 5-year increments, so they go on quite a ways, correct?
That's correct, yeah.
Okay, so we would have that ability to help our low income should the need arise.
We believe so. We need to determine the impact of potentially how many customers, what financial impact that will be on an annual basis, and whether or not our revenues, non-rate revenues.
All right, good,
will
thank you.
sustain that.
It's good to at least know we have an option there, so thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, at this time, public comments. Do we have any cards?
Yes, Mayor, we do have speaker cards.
Okay.
Richard Gutierrez.
Mr.
Mayor,
Gutierrez,
City
before you
Council.
start, I'd like to just say that each person that comes up and speak, I will ask your name and where you live. You do not have to tell us where you live. It's just a request, and there's no obligation at all if you don't want to tell us where you live.
Oh, that's fine. No, I live in Simi Valley, Wright Ranch. Yeah, my name is Richard Gutierrez.
You've been here a while, right, Ranch?
Yes, I have, yeah. Yeah, since 1991. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah,
Great.
homeowner and a citizen. I'm kind of interested how this ballot came out, and we're going to have an election coming up. I mean, shouldn't have this been on the ballot that's coming up? Because kind of when I look at it, it looks kind of like a piece of junk mail. And, you know, granted, I filled it out, and I'm pretty sure it's a slam dunk for the city, because I would imagine that most of the homeowners didn't do this. Or if I had a nickel for every time somebody told me they pay their bills online and they never use an envelope, well, there you go. And it's, I don't know, it just kind of looks like it's out of the Javier Becerra playbook on how to hoodwink the homeowners, you know what I mean, and the taxpayers. It's just kind of unfair that, I could see if there wasn't an election coming up and you had to do this, well, fine. But like I said, just looking at the way this thing is, it doesn't resemble anything like a ballot that I've ever seen. Like I say, I'll mention again, it's kind of like a piece of junk mail. And that's just a little concerning, that's all.
Thank you.
Terry Hoffman. Joe Pachowski.
Evening, Mayor Mashburn, members of the council. Here we go again. Let's sock it to the single family resident again. You just passed a 40% increase on the sewer rates just a couple months ago. And now we're going to turn around and pass a 27% increase on the single family residents again. It's got to stop. Why is it that the multifamily residences are seeing a 15% drop in the first year, while mine would be going up 10% as a resident of Wood Ranch? That's absolutely ridiculous. In fact, if you look at the rates, the single family residences are taking the brunt of this. Commercial businesses are all seeing a drop in the first year. With multifamily residences are all ending up with the same rate, basically the same rate within cents 5 years down the road, whereas the single family ratepayers are going to be socked for a 27% increase. That's unbelievable. If the rates have to go up, they have to go up. But this isn't the way to do it. You know, if the rates have to go up, raise them the same. Make the commercial businesses pay the same increases that you're asking single family residences to pay. If you look at it, even the commercial businesses are still ending up better off in most cases than they are now, yet not the single family residences. Why is that? Something that needs to be looked at. And for the record, I don't agree with her much, but on this, I agree with Councilwoman Luevanos. People using more water should be paying more for water. And that's the bottom line. So this shouldn't be a matter where somebody who owns, a large piece of property at the corner of Wood Ranch Parkway and Martha Morrison pays less for water than, my 1,300 square foot home has. But if I'm using less water than the people that live over there on that corner, I should be paying less for water. It makes sense. I don't know if a tiered rate solution is the right way to go, but at the very least, what's being proposed tonight is definitely not the right way to go. We can't keep socking it to the single-family residences every single time, we've got a rate increase coming. And just hit us with a 40% increase on our sewer rates. And it has to stop. And I'm looking to you guys tonight to turn around and say, hey, you know what? We've got to do a better job on this. Send it back, have them come back with a better proposal. Thanks.
Thank you.
I have two other speaker cards, Mick Patterson and Christopher Coyne. Were these for a public statement or for this item?
Public statement.
Thank you. Mayor, I have two others.
On this particular item, sir?
Oh, yeah, no, not on this particular item.
Okay, great, thank you.
No other speaker cards for this item.
Okay. All right. This time, the public hearing is closed, and we'll take questions or comments from the council. Elaine.
I have several comments, but I do want to have a follow-up question based on what Mr. Piechowski just stated. It is correct that the variation, the percentage of increase changes in this plan based on single-family versus commercial, et cetera. Did the nexus change? How is it that 5 years ago there was a certain relationship and now 5 years later, for instance, commercial is going down how has the nexus changed that would allow that? Because I assume that that's what this increase was based upon.
One of the factors with regards to the single-family rate this year is that the board of directors at that time, 5 years ago, adopted single-family rates, and there was a cap on the rate for the last 2 years, I believe. The rate did not go up. It got capped. And therefore, this next 5-year period, the single-family rate is proposed to be what it should have been back 5 years ago.
Okay, thank you. So I do have just some thoughts, and maybe I would take discussion from there. I do understand where there is a need, obviously, to cover our expenses and to have, the case has been made to have our reserves, et cetera. So I understand that. I do think it is ironic that we are penalizing people for being good conservationists. As I read the report, part of the reason for this is that our water usage declined, and so that made the cost go up a bit. And so I just want to go on the record that I do think it is unfortunate that people are being penalized for good works, and so I think we should be very careful about that. The second, I want to just make a comment about flat rate versus tiered rate. Part of the reason I believe that we were supportive of the flat rate is that we didn't want to penalize larger families and which sometimes, to be very honest, can be lower income. But I think there was a desire to make sure that there was equitable rates that did not penalize based on household size, et cetera. And so in my mind, that was one of the biggest concerns with having the tiered rate, is that larger households would bear a disproportionate burden and have to pay more. And so I think the case for flat rate was made last time. But I wanted to state that I appreciate that you've built into this the possibility for discounting for low income. That I think that's critical, and I want to be sure that that is followed through. Now, having said that, I personally would like to amend it. If we're going to raise these rates, I believe that the assumptions show that what was built in is the increase of presumed water rate increases of 5%. And I know you tried to explain what they said, but in my mind, if we do this, I do not think we should then also include the part in it that states that every year we will just immediately pass through the increase in Cayuga's water, increased costs, because in my mind, that's already built into the assumption of these water rate increases. And so I think I would suggest we have that stricken from the motion if and when we get there. The other thing which you haven't discussed tonight, but I think is important, is if we look at the comparison tables, Golden State Water provides for, is it a third or two? A third of Simi Valley residents. And if we look at the table, this increase in water rates still doesn't get it to the level, it's still below, it's quite a bit below Golden State water rates, which a third of our residents are paying. Now, I would encourage that we find a way of influencing their rates. I know if we can get on their board or do something, but I think we need to do something that can equalize the water rates for all of our citizens. And so, anyway, I just want that to be that on the record. So those are my insights for right now, my thoughts.
Okay.
Thank you.
Other comments?
I would like to, state that I want to make sure that we are fiscally responsible and we meet the needs. But I'm opposed to the flat rate because I'm opposed to, people who use less water paying more and subsidizing those who use more water. I think that's inequitable. I think that's unfair. And so I will be, voting against this, not because I don't want us to meet our fiscal responsibility, but simply because I feel it would be more equitable to have tiered rates as opposed to a flat rate. And I don't think that our residents should be subsidizing other residents who use more water. For that reason, I will be voting, and I just wanted to justify my vote. But I agree with Councilwoman Lidster in terms of, we should have the same water district for everyone. I will be proposing at 9B, requesting that the city look into, buying out Golden State Water for public health safety reasons, for a number of reasons, but also so that there's uniformity for all of our residents and safety issues as well. But I will be, asking for that as an 9B item and looking into how we can do that. I know County Board of Supervisors have said, they would help us in that regard as well. But because of the difference in cost, I think we can move forward. It would also, if we bought more water, it would also lower our costs. Is that correct? So I'm assuming that if we purchase more water, it might.
Well, I think probably not, because the more we purchase, that means it's just the more that is being distributed to the residents. It's kind of they've used 10 billing units, we have to buy 10 billing units. It's kind of something like that.
So I know other city contracts we have, sometimes if you buy more, we get a discount because it's bulk. And so I don't know what, the details of all that are, but it would be nice if all of our residents had the same water bill, the same rate. That would be equitable as well. And those are my comments.
It would be nice if it was equitable because I am on Golden State Water, so I am paying more. What I wanted to mention was the increase on the single family. I know they mentioned that it was increasing more, and you did explain that that was because for the last 2 years, we have not done an increase on the single family while we did on every other level, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so that kind of explains why that's going up a little bit quicker in the very beginning, so thank you. The other thing, the flat versus tiered, when we originally started in on this, I was thinking more the tiered was better because I'm actually on tiered with Golden State. But then I turn around and go, okay, it's an apple for an apple. So if I use 1 gallon of water, I'm paying for 1 gallon of water. If you use 2, you're paying for 2. So we're paying the same price per gallon of water. So that's one way to look at it. Then there's another way to look at it, but if I'm using a lot more and you're conserving, you should get a discount. So to me, that would be discounting it and not actually the cost of it. So I was a little bit torn on it, but I actually I have the tiered and I actually don't like it because I have a pool. And when I have to put water in the pool, sometimes I end up using a little bit more water and it really throws me up on the tier for that particular time. And so my water bill goes up substantially one billing cycle. So that can kind of throw me off too. So I'm a little more comfortable on the flat rate. I mean, there's pros and cons both ways. I know the audience is tending to lean towards the tiered. But I don't think it's a perfect answer either way. Buying Golden State, they're big. I don't know if we would have that opportunity. They're not just Simi Valley, they're also in other locations. But maybe there's a way we can work with them so that they have to meet our standards and such also. So that would be good. And maybe pricing similar, but I don't know how they're going to do that. Are they for profit and we're not for profit?
Yes.
Yeah, see that, there's
I
a,
bought them out, just so
yeah, there's a
Ojai bought
difference.
out Golden State Water.
Right, see, so there's a difference. They have stockholders and our stockholders are you. So there's a little bit of a difference there also. So I'm probably going to lean towards the flat versus the tiered. So thank you.
Thank you. Others? Mike? Okay, myself, I have the same comments about the flat. Is I look at the person going into the gas station next to me, he pumps in 20 gallons, I pump in 10. Why are we not the same per gallon? It makes sense to me, and it's the easiest thing for the residents to explain. And the way you conserve fuel in your car is you probably buy a smaller car, and or you don't drive so fast on the freeway. That might be another way of doing it. So you can still conserve. As far as Golden State, number one, I believe that Golden State is regulated by the state of California and has to follow those safety standards. And we've offered numerous times to go, and myself personally have offered numerous times to do any testing you want to do, and I would go with you and go through that process to determine if there's some kind of misleading information coming out of Golden State on the quality of their water, which I don't think there is. I think they would pass the test and they would meet state standards. Now, if they didn't meet state standards, then we got to go to the state and do something, and I'd go beside you if that was the case. But first we have to determine if that is the case. Just to say that we should take over Golden State, I don't agree with Elaine. That's an overreach of government. I do agree with.
I didn't say take over it.
I do agree with Councilmember Luevanos that a purchase is an entirely different item, and that's something that if the voters want, we could look at that. But then we do have a kind of a monopoly if we only have one source in the entire city to buy from. So we have to be careful of that and see all the ramifications of that. So that discussion, you wanted to say something, Elaine?
No, I just want to be clear. I'm not suggesting take over, but maybe we could find a way to work with them or put members on their board of directors, somehow have more interaction as a city with them that we can somehow influence if possible.
Okay, that's a little bit different than what I heard the first.
Sorry if I was not clear.
Yeah, because I don't believe in government taking over private industry.
Agreed, and that's
So,
absolutely.
Anyway, that's my comments. Any others?
Yes, I just have a quick comment. The way that, with regard to Mr. Gutierrez's comment, the way that it was noticed, he just showed one small paper. Does it look like, is it the same way that we did the sewage rates? Is it the same way that we've always given notice? Was it bundled with a bunch of other papers, or, how was it? Is it the same notice that we've always given?
It's the same type of notice we've always given. In fact, here is a copy of the notice. It's a multi-page notice that went out, talks about the public hearing, talks about the reasons, talks about the rates, shows some rate comparison. It does have the ballot that you can cut out and send in. And this is, we've done this several times in terms of posting or sending notices, so this is a copy here. We think it was a good notice.
And maybe we could, for the future, compare how other cities do it, if the notice is bigger, or to make it look more like a ballot, or just, you never know if other cities do it better, but I'd like to speak to Mr. Gutierrez's concern in terms of, does it actually look like a ballot? Does it actually look like you have a choice in voting it, or does it just look like a protest, and how valid that looks? And plus, the print is really tiny. We do have, I know Mayor Mashburn does not think that we have, citizens who have issues reading small print, but I know that in my household we do. So, that might be an option as well. So I'd just like to make sure that our residents have due process.
I have to comment on that too for, I think it was Mr. Gutierrez's comments, is in a bigger view of that, I think that's a flawed system. The 218 process is flawed. I don't believe we're ever going to see a protest large enough to reverse simply because people don't realize what it is, and therefore, we're never going to get the count that shows truly what the feeling of the people are. So I say from that standpoint, it's flawed. I know that's not our place to change it here, but when we look at state issues, that's something that we can all take a look at.
I'm sorry, I just have one more question, Mayor, if I may. People who get their bill electronically, did they get the same paper, or how did they get notice for the ballot?
These are sent via the mail to every property owner.
So regardless of how they get the bill, if they get electronic bill,
Yes.
then they would have still gotten one
I
mail
think
to
we
them?
sent out 25,090 documents or notices like this.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that people who were getting electronic billing would have also gotten the same.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, may I make one comment?
Yes, sir.
I just wanted to assure Councilmember Litster that I asked that exact question of our consultant about 4 times, whether or not that inflation was included in his proposed rates. He assured me every time that he did not include the 5% inflation into the proposed commodity rates. Those he anticipated would increase every year based on our pass-through process.
So why does he list it as an assumption?
Again, it was part of, it's kind of a 2-phase report. He was working on the financial plan portion, which he needed to know. He needed to get an estimate of what our expenses may be in the future, so he chose an inflation factor of
So is there
5%.
somewhere else in this report that shows the actual assumptions that were used then specifically to come up with the rates?
I don't recall that he indicated there was specifically someplace else in the report, but again, he did assure me several times that, sure.
The thing to remember, too, is that in that financial plan, he inflated both the expense of water and the revenue for water by 5%. He said that's going to be the increase. What we're proposing to do in the rate is only pass through the actual increase, whether it's 5%, 4%, 4.3%, 6.7%, wherever it falls, we pass through that exact expense increase. So while he assumed that the expense and revenue would both increase 5% per year, what we're proposing is do the exact expense that's passed on to us. So that's why it's not double counted. We don't have in our rate built in that we're going to add 5% every year. We don't have anything built into our rate. He just did it in the financial plan to show what the overall expense picture would look like.
But you do have the rate increasing. I mean, when you say you don't have,
The commodities are not inflated by that 5%. The commodity is absent that increase, that assumption.
And to continue that the commodity will only go up when our cost goes up. No
And-
different than if we're buying from the local Coca-Cola company.
And it'll go up by the amount it goes up. So if it's less
Only-
than 5%, then we can pass on less than a 5%.
Okay, only that. And then the administrative, not the commodity, the administrative is going up.
You mean the operation and maintenance?
Operations, yes.
For the financial plan, the consultant used a 3.5% factor.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, I move that the Board of Directors approve the water cost of service and rate study report Find that a notice in accordance with Prop 218 was sent to the Waterworks ratepayers describing the proposed water service rates and the procedure for protesting the rate increases. And further find that a majority of the ratepayers did not protest the proposed rates and adopt resolution number WWD-276, establish new water service rates commencing January 1st, 2021.
Second.
We have a motion and second. Call for the vote.
I voted.
I did too. You're a witness, I voted.
Motion passes with Councilmember Luevano voting no.
Okay, we are at, okay. Public comments.
Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, next item on the agenda is Agenda Item 5. This is a time for public comments on all other items other than public hearings, appointments, and information reports. Speakers will be called in the order in which their card was submitted. Speakers have 3 minutes to speak. When the yellow light comes on, speakers have 30 seconds to conclude their comments. City Council members cannot respond to your questions during this time, however, may offer a response to the extent possible under Agenda Item 5A. Mayor Mashburn, we do have speaker cards.
Okay.
Alan Weiner.
Thank you very much. My name's Alan Weiner. I'm the co-chair of the local chapter of 350.org. That's the worldwide organization fighting the climate emergency. And it is a climate emergency. How do we do this? There's two sides. One side is to use more renewable energy, and I'm pleased to say that my last visit to the Simi Valley City Council was a couple years ago when we encouraged the city to join the Clean Power Alliance. And for the last year, everybody in Simi Valley has been getting cleaner, cheaper electricity because the council joined the Clean Power Alliance. This is a wonderful thing. Now, there's another opportunity that is a citywide opportunity, and that is for new construction to go gas-free. It doesn't mean we will shut off the gas to your house. It means if we build a new house, we don't need to put in something that is going to be out of date and a stranded asset. It's cheaper to build without gas, and it's also cheaper to run the house without gas. You all got one of these yellow handouts. I don't need to enumerate all the talking points in there, but Simi Valley will not be alone. There's more than 15 cities in the state of California that have already adopted ordinances called REACH codes that enable this to happen. There are two lengthy documents that I provided, one of each. One is a sample REACH code, an ordinance that can be adopted by the city, and the other document is a very long legal analysis of how this can be done. So I just want to say, for the benefit of the climate and for the benefit of new construction, I urge you to consider having an ordinance like this and being forward-looking just the way the city was with the Clean Power Alliance.
Thank you, sir. Would you care to tell us where you live?
I live in Agoura Hills, but the chapter of 350 goes all the way from Burbank to Simi Valley to Oxnard and Ojai. So we cover a large area. We're going to the local city councils for this just the way we did for the Clean Power Alliance.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Next speaker, Emilio Mora.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council members. This is my first time here. My name is Emilio Mora. I live at 342 White Bark Lane up in the Woodlands. And the reason of my being here is because we have a very dangerous issue with speeding throughout the community. One of the things that we enjoy is that we do have wider streets, but that also causes a lot of trouble with speeders. On Sequoia, we've already had several incidents where there was one incident where the father saved his child by being hit by somebody that was speeding just by the mere reflexes of a dad. And we've had several issues. And I believe that if something is not done about the situation in our White Bark, I live on White Bark, and people drive down White Bark at 50, 55 miles an hour, and it's just a matter of time before somebody has a really bad accident. So one of the suggestions that I am a member of the Safety Committee, and one of the suggestions that they did was to put speed bumps at different locations that would slow down traffic, posting speed limit signs throughout the community, even painting the slow down on the pavement, if that would help. Anything that would help to slow down the speeders in the community would be incredibly helpful. And so I just want to bring that up because I know that getting speed bumps in a community is a long process, but I don't think we can really wait for that. It is really a very volatile situation, as I see it every day, and me just going like this, it's not working. There are other members of our community here. I don't know how many, but it is a concern to all of us. It's a brand new community, and we're asking for your help. Okay? Thank you so much. Any questions? Okay.
Questions? All right. Thank you, sir.
Thank
Well,
you.
have you spoken with Building and Safety about this issue?
Yes, and they said that I needed to come here.
Okay.
So here I am.
Here you are. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Next speaker, Jorge Garcia.
Good evening, Excellency, council members. I'm Jorge Garcia, Simi Valley resident, and I too would like to talk about climate, but it's a little different climate, the social climate. And I'm basing my remarks from reading letters to the editor in the Acorn, the Star, and then observing some of the social media sites that are focused on our town here. And you know, I know that just as we can't control the weather, the physical weather, the social climate, the social weather we have is something that we have to deal with. And you as the mayor, the city council, you're elected to deal with these things. You know, we rely upon you to keep us safe in many ways. And in looking at the situation and seeing and hearing what people say and write and post, I want to go back to the 40s, the 1840s. because what was going on then was very similar to what we're doing now, and some of the rhetoric and some of the exchange was about the same. At that time, the concern was about starving Irish papists who were flooding into the country, who were being described as indigestible, uncivilized, unassimilatable. And it was on the issue of them being papists. You know, and 6 of the original 13 colonies that became states had religious requirements for being able to vote and run for office. Some of them very specific, such as swearing oaths that basically excluded people of certain faiths. And this was being fanned by politicians, by preachers, by newspapers. So much so that, and remember, we're only about 50 years after the establishment of the Constitution, so 50 years after the actual beginning of the country. People say, oh, 1776. Well, you know, that was a declaration of independence. It took about a 5-year war to convince Great Britain, okay, let them go. And then we went through a period of confederation that didn't work. So it's not until about 1790 that we actually become the republic that we have now. So you're only talking about 50 years in. A group of people were so worried that they were forming chapters of something called the Order of the Star-Spangled Banner. See, patriots always, we like to wrap ourselves in the flag, right? And what they were out to do, their stated purpose was to return America to the land it once was. This is in the 1840s. What was going on from Maine to South Carolina, Catholic churches were being burned. But what you need to do, I'll wrap it up saying, look, unassimilatable, what happened to the Irish? Look at St. Patrick's Day, how we celebrate today. So we have to think, look at our history, and have more faith in our country and its processes.
Thank you.
Jenny Knack.
We almost had the police chief chasing you for that red light. You ran the red light.
Some flyers to give to them about an event. So there's an event on February 13th. It's a SSFL work group event. The SSFL work group has been in action for 30 years as a way to educate the community and connect the community to elected officials and people who are in charge of the San Susanna Field Lab cleanup. So this year we have Jared Blumenfeld, who is the Cal EPA secretary. Cal EPA is on top, has oversight over the Department of Toxic Substances Control, which is the enforcer or the regulator for the cleanup. So this is a great opportunity for anyone who's interested in the field lab, the history, the cleanup, and what is happening right now. So the really brief history is that over the past 10 years, we've had a really hard time with DTSE, but Jared Blumenfeld took his post last year, I believe, and it seems like the stars are aligning. So Cal EPA is now supporting the cleanup, the Ventura Board of Supervisors, City of LA, City of Ventura. So we're hoping to have several electeds coming in addition to Jared Blumenfeld. I would like to invite all of you to come. It'll be a great opportunity for everyone to learn and ask questions. There will be a Q&A at the end, and anyone in the community that would like to come, it's free. And the only other thing I wanted to cover was bringing up the Golden State issue. So, separate topic, different hat. I think there's great public support for equal rates, equal quality. Golden State customers pay more for what could potentially be lesser quality. So when there was the big hullabaloo last year, or at the end of, when the community found out that they were using groundwater, they stated that they were using no more than 17%. But last year, at the water board meeting, they admitted to using up to 67% groundwater at any given time. That's 50% difference of groundwater that could be used. They didn't detail when they were using it. But when they do the testing, you're saying, Mayor Mashburn, that the testing that they do is, regulated by the state, and that's true. But a lot of the contaminants that are coming off the hill only have to be tested for 3 or 4 times a year. And the issue with that is they have a window that they can test. And they can choose to do that. They don't always have to do it right after it rains, right when you might expect groundwater or contaminants that are routed into the reservoir, the Silverdale Reservoir, that goes down into the groundwater. There may be times where you would expect to see more. So during last year's rainy season after the fire, there was 57 exceedances. That was very high compared to what we saw the year before, which was 3. Darn it. Next time, we'll continue.
Thank
Can
you.
I interrupt real quick? It's not going to yellow. It's going straight from green to
Oh,
red.
wait, you may have more time.
I thought it did it on Mr. Garcia, but I wasn't sure.
Yeah, the 30-second isn't popping.
Yeah, the 30-second warning isn't. Okay.
Thank you.
It helps.
So we got to take that ticket back from Mr. Garcia.
Mick Patterson?
Hello, Mayor, council members. Mick Patterson. I live in the Cadota Fig Farm area. Been there for over 30 years. I also support 350.org, and I want to speak along the lines that Alan was speaking earlier about going gas-free in new construction. I think this is a forward-looking thing to do. It's an important thing to do. We're not moving nearly fast enough on the climate crisis, but we are starting to move. And I think that I've studied the science, and I think that we are very, very likely to see some serious movement over the next 10-year period of time, which means if all of the new residential buildings that we're building now that are dependent on gas are going to have to be retrofit. A forward-looking solution to this problem is to deal with it now. It's not costly to do it. It's definitely feasible to do it. It's something that we should do. And also, I think that we should, I'm in the process of converting my house now to gas-free. And I live in an early 60s house, kind of a ranch-style house that there were so many of them built at that time in Simi Valley. No insulation in the walls, no insulation in the slab foundation. It's an energy hog. And I'm trying to deal with that. And it would be great if we could provide some kind of support to the people in Simi Valley, even if it's just what you can do, to help fix this problem. I think it would be a great thing for us to get involved with. Thank you. I beat the buzzer.
Thank you.
Giovanni Ragsdale?
Good evening, Mayor Mashburn and council members. I am a resident of Simi Valley, and I'm here this evening representing Adventist Health Simi Valley Foundation, part of your local hospital. We're part of the consent agenda, and we certainly wanted to express our appreciation for the support that the city does of special events to a number of nonprofits in the community that do things to bring our community together. But I did want to take an opportunity this evening to introduce you to our new CFO at Adventist Health Simi Valley, Chip Owens, who has now become a resident of Simi Valley as well. And so we are excited to continue to have the city support and to be able to put patient safety first in everything that we do and provide top quality care here in our city. And we just thank you for your continued support of the hospital.
Thank you very much.
Christopher Coyne?
Hello. My name is Christopher Coyne. I live at 238 Sequoia Avenue, and I'm just expanding on what this gentleman had said earlier about the really severe speeding and traffic problems that are going on up there. I know it's 45 on Sequoia, and then when you come into the Woodlands where I live, there's no posted speed limit. And my son was almost hit and would surely have been killed just a few nights ago, just walking down to get the mail. So when that happened, it really changed something for me, you know, and how things like that do happen. And there are a lot of kids up there, and something is going to happen. And I would like to address these problems before they do happen. And I think one of the issues too is that there's two construction companies. There's KB and Lennar. So I went to an HOA meeting and it was just useless, because it's like, well, you know, there's KB, and then, well, then Lennar should do it, and then, well, then KB should do it. And there's a lot of finger pointing, which is where they finally ended up pointing at you guys and said, get to the city council meeting and let them know. So I think a bare minimum is speed limit signs. And then I do think speed humps is something that I guess people are always like, dude, they're really like impossible to get and you're never going to get it done. But I'm willing to make the first step to make our neighborhood safer than it is now, because right now it is it's a legit concern, and the kids and really anyone just crossing the street, it's really getting to be too much up there. So I would just like to propose someone to go up and just look around and say, yeah, there's no speed limit signs in this neighborhood, and to do something about it. So I appreciate your time, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
Greg Kent?
Hello, everyone. I guess it's pretty much the same type of thing that we're all here for. I live at 327 Sequoia Avenue. There is a couple other issues up there as well. They have, at the corner of Fir and Sequoia, they have put in a roundabout. And because they've done so, they can only put a stop sign on Fir. And what we're seeing up there is the people stopped on Fir. Sequoia guys can go right through, and there's numerous times we have a couple bang-ups because there's only a one-sided stop sign. We were told this was because a roundabout doesn't require now stop signs on either side, and that's what's also causing the speeding down these hills. The other suggestion too, on Sequoia, we only have 2 stop signs from the top of the Woodlands all the way down to Royal. You get through those stop signs, they're still flying like you wouldn't believe to get to Royal. There's a school around the corner, people are running late. We need to do something just to slow the traffic down up in that area. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, that was the last speaker card.
Okay, I think the city manager wants to address one area of the speeding.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So a number of residents have contacted our Public Works Department. Among the issues that we're dealing with is the city hasn't accepted the streets up there. So they're not our streets, so their signage may not be done yet. And unfortunately, it sounds like you're getting pulled between the 2 developers that are up there. I know our police chief is hearing this. Once they leave the development onto city streets, we can certainly increase our enforcement on Sequoia Avenue. But we're reaching out to the developers to see if we can work with them on a couple of different solutions that we've come up with to slow the speeding down and some of the activity up there.
Okay, I'm going to piggyback on the city manager's comments. Thank you, number one, for coming and bringing this up. That's the first step, and don't hesitate to call the police department. Don't hesitate to call us individually if needed, and we'll continue looking into it and working with the developers until something positive happens. It's not the, unfortunately, it's not the only area of the city that we're having speeding problems. Comments from others about public statements?
Yes, just a couple, and I concur. Do we know how soon we might have acceptance of those streets, or we would take over?
It'll be a while. That usually doesn't happen until the developer is nearly done.
Sold out, okay.
Yeah, and one of the developers is moving much faster than the other, so it could tend to slow that process down.
Okay.
But like I said, we're going to work, we have a couple of ideas that we can work with on the developer and trying to do some traffic calming up in that area.
Gotcha. Well, okay, and we will be mindful of it and make sure that, thank you, talk to the developers. I wanted to thank Mr. Garcia for the history lesson. Always love your insights. Thank you very much. Jenna, thank you for making us be aware of this meeting on February 13th, and very much appreciate that as well. And wanted to welcome Mr. Owens as our newest, one of our new residents. I don't know, maybe moved in or not, but we're welcome to the Adventist Health family. So that was my comments. Thank you.
Kavanaugh? Dee?
I was just going to say, I understand the speeding technique. My parents live at the top of Erringer, and they dealt with that for many years, people racing up and down, going to Hollow Hills. They were finally able to get speed bumps, but my dad would stand out there and yell at people all the time, too. As a retired cop, he was good at it. So that is important, and I know we're going to stay on top of that and get something done, because I think that's very important, and it's something that we need to do as a city to keep our people safe. Also, Adventist Hospital is always on my heart. I just stepped off the governing board over there, so and I was on the foundation board for a few years. So they do great and wonderful things here, and I'm happy that they're able to get a grant from us this evening if it's approved. So thank you. That's it.
Okay. Councilmember Luevanos.
I'd like to thank the two speakers from 350 Conejo. Thank you for bringing to light the climate issues that impact all of us living on this planet, so that's everybody. And, I would ask our city manager to ask her, when we do our planning, because we are working on our general plan, updating our general plan, to consider an ordinance, whether city council would consider an ordinance for going gas-free for our new developments. I'm always asking for solar panels and, more environmentally friendly things like that. And I am very proud that we are members of CPA, the Clean Power Alliance. So thank you for bringing that to light. Ms. Knack, I'd like to thank you for bringing to light the speaker on February 13th. And I think, behooves all of us to make sure that we advocate on behalf of our residents. And with regard to, Golden State Water, I was here, I heard them say it as well. The difference between 17% and 67% is a huge difference, and we need to hold them accountable. And I will make sure that at least I will be doing that. Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, next item on the agenda is item 6, the consent calendar, and there are two resolutions for consideration. Item 6, resolution number 2020-04, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Simi Valley authorizing transfer of unclaimed property to the Department of Administrative Services for use by the city. And item 7, resolution number WWD-275, a resolution of the Board of Directors of Ventura County Waterworks District Number 8, establishing a policy on the discontinuation of residential water service for non-payment in compliance with the Water Shutoff Protection Act, California Health and Safety Code, Section 116900, amending Resolution WWD-122 and Ventura County Waterworks District Number 8 rules and regulations. And staff is available for questions if needed.
Okay. Consent items.
Mayor.
Green, not a green light.
I was just going to say, after speaking with our city attorney, instead of abstaining on 4, I'm going to actually recuse myself on item number 4. So when we vote on that, I will step out
Okay, we'll just, yeah,
when we get to that item.
okay.
Mayor, I'd like to pull consent items 3, 4, 6, and 7.
3, 4, 6, and 7. Okay, let's start with, oh, I thought you said something, I'm sorry. Consent 4,
3?
do you want to leave?
You're going to discuss, yes.
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor, I'll
Oh, wait, yeah, we're going to discuss it, I'm sorry.
Yeah, just for the record, I'm going to, after talking to the city attorney, I'm just going to state for the fact that I am an honorary member of the Kiwanis Club of Simi Valley, the Rotary Noontime Club, and many other service clubs in the city, but I will not be recusing myself from the vote.
Okay.
And if I can add, just for everybody, when you are a member of a nonprofit in town, which I believe those are, then if you disclose it on the record, absent other interest, you can vote. So that's, if you have particular connections, then see me, like if there's something real specific.
Okay, we'll start with your questions on number 4, Councilmember Luevanos.
Yes, I had a question, and I don't know if anyone is here to answer it. Well, 2 concerns. One was, I know we had budgeted for $25,000 to be awarded, and, what is being asked for is $30,000. So, I want to make sure that we're fiscally responsible in making sure that we stay within the budget that we allotted, which was $25,000. My other concern was the request from applicant Simi Valley Cultural Arts Center Foundation for the 2020 Spotlight Awards. When I read the report on page 2, it says that there's a preference to fund events with greater community public benefits over events with lesser community public benefits. And I was very, concerned when I read the application because it discussed that the use of the funds were specifically to pay performers for the fundraiser. And I realized that the other events were also fundraisers, but the money is going back to the community. Even, the country festival, the money is going back to scholarships and the YMCA and Boys and Girls Club. But this one, I didn't see anywhere where it was going back to the community. And so my concern is, how do we justify giving $5,000 grant to something that benefits individual performers? I know that when, you perform, I would expect that they would be donating their services, but not that the city would be subsidizing the fundraiser for the performers. So I'm concerned about that. The rest of the grants, I think, are wonderful. I think it's the Adventist Health and the Free Clinic in Kiwanis and the Chamber of Commerce and the Rotary Club. I read through every application. I saw that every single one of them definitely has a public benefit in terms of giving back to the greater community. And so, I had no problem with those. And so if we eliminated the Simi Valley Cultural Arts Center Foundation grant because of the way that it's written, and I don't see that there's a greater community public benefit, then we would also be able to stay within our budget of $25,000 that we allotted.
Okay, and correct me, you said it's up to 30?
Well, but if you look how it says, it looks to me like there was a request of $10,000 from Seventh-day Adventists, and what was approved was $5,000. So that's where you got to the $25,000 if you look at the total. So anyway, but that doesn't speak to your point about what it's used for. But looking at where it shows the allocation on the second or third page, it adds up to 25.
Oh, recommended. Yes, you're right. I'm sorry. Thank you for correcting me, Councilwoman Mintzer. So my concern is, with regard to that and the way that it was written. And if you look at the application on, all the proceeds seem to be going back to the community in some way, shape, or form. But I just can't see how we can justify, expending public money when it benefits the performance directly.
Okay, could we have comments by staff?
Yeah, so it is $25,000. There was grant request up to $30,000, but the Special Event Support Review approved $25,000. There is a member of the Special Event Support Review Committee who is present. If he would like to come up and speak, that's fine. I can just kind of tell you what the committee discussed. I think they were looking at, with the Spotlight Awards, they were trying to look at each event and what it gave to the community. The Cultural Arts Center does provide a lot of entertainment to our seniors, and art is very important, and they wanted to make sure that that venue still had opportunity. I think I'm saying it right. And that was kind of their point of discussion on the Spotlight Award, or contributing to the Spotlight Awards.
Okay, help me out. The Spotlight Awards, to me, is a dinner where the cultural arts people give their awards to each other.
They give it to
They're
artists.
like the Academy Awards.
Sort of.
Only thing for the Simi Valley Cultural Arts Center. So it's a special night, and it's I think there's the cost to attend.
Yes.
And they raise money at that event.
That's correct.
Okay, and then where does the money go?
I believe it goes into the Cultural Arts Foundation, which helps promote acts and productions at the Cultural Arts Center. Helps with, programs and some sorts of subsidies, and helps with the Cultural Arts Center.
So can you tell me how much goes directly to, I know they do scholarships, how much of this $5,000 would go directly to scholarships?
I can't tell you offhand. I would have to get that information for you.
If I might, reading what it says on the application, it says, "Our hopes are to raise a gross revenue." So it is a fundraising event, but the purpose of which, obviously there's an expense to put it on, and that's how you raise funds, but our hopes are to raise a gross revenue amount of at least $75,000 and retain at least $50,000 to be invested into the foundation's endowment fund, where interest is used to support Simi Valley Cultural Arts Center's programming, operations, budgets. 100% of net proceeds will be invested back into the Simi Valley Cultural Arts Center through the foundation's endowment. So really, as I see it, it is helping to put on their fundraising to support the Cultural Arts Center. That's how I read it. I don't see where it said specifically it just pays for entertainment, but maybe I didn't read what Councilmember Luevanos did.
Councilwoman Lister, if you just go right above that, it says city-granted funds will be, it's on page 17, city-granted funds will be utilized to pay performance fees to these local artists who will reinvest the stipends into the local economy. And so my question is, why aren't the performers donating their time if they're the ones who are benefiting, through exposure? Because, I just went to the Lou Rothman Awards on Friday, and there were two, teachers who sang, and they sang beautifully, and they didn't charge, for that. And, people paid to go to that award ceremony. So it just, to me, it just strikes as a conflict of interest. And if it's a fundraiser, then, you would find people to donate their time, or you would find ways to pay them, because that's the purpose of a fundraiser, is that you make money off of the event. So, and again, I didn't see a nexus. I don't see where it says, we're going to give free tickets to low-income seniors or to low-income families, to attend events. I don't see that anywhere in there. And that's why I'm going back to, what the standards are, what is the community benefit? I just don't see that.
I hear your argument, and I feel the same way you do, that if they're going to go to that, to raise funds for their organization, they ought to donate their time to raising those funds. I belong to a few nonprofits. I don't make it's all donated time. So.
But I might play devil's advocate only because, and I don't know and I think maybe they were too specific in the way they wrote it. I mean, the reality is that whether it be Roundup or whatever event you have that ultimately raises funds and puts money back in the community, you are going to have expenses such as possibly a DJ or rental of heaters or whatever the event might be. And I think they were maybe more specific to say it. I'm guessing Roundup probably helps pay the DJ who they don't donate their time to come, for instance. And anyway, and we're supporting money for that event, which of course is a great community event. I would venture to say that I would be willing to support this grant, but maybe we need to say you can use it for your event, but don't use city funds to pay for the singers, or but you can use it to help put the event on. I mean, I think they were just too specific, but I think it's the general effect is to raise funds for a cultural arts center.
I'm sorry.
No, I'm good.
Where are the Spotlight Awards this year? Where are they having them?
I'm not sure.
Usually like the.
They're
Grand
usually at the
Vista.
Were they at the Cultural Arts Center one year? No?
No, it's too small. They don't have a big enough area for it.
Last year it was at Wood Ranch Country Club.
Yeah, Wood Ranch or.
Yeah, I'm just looking at all the money going out.
So my point to that is, all these charities are going to pay for their venues. What's the difference? You're paying for a venue, you're paying for somebody to perform at the award show to raise money for the charity. It's the same thing. Now, they asked for a grant. We had a committee that reviewed the grants, approved the grants the way they are. To sit here on the dais and try to nitpick the grants, to me, is political, and we shouldn't be doing that. We agreed not to do that a few years ago. That's why we have a committee.
I agree with you also on that. I'm looking at this and I'm like, I think we ought to have a committee to take a look at our selection process, because I want that money to go to the needy in the city to benefit them the most. And I think we're losing some sight here of where that money's going. So I hate to be the one to say, let's kick the can down the road. We could ask them to do a better application, and they could probably put all sorts of stuff in, because I do know they do scholarships for people and what have you. But the bottom line is it's getting too loose. It's getting way too loose. And the money's designed to help those that are in need, and that's where it should end up.
Isn't this money available every year for these people for these organizations to apply
Yes.
for it?
Yes.
Yes.
What is the difference this year?
And they actually were awarded money last year for the
Okay.
Spotlight
Yeah,
Awards.
Were they?
Yes, they
Were
were.
they?
They've been
Yes.
awarded money every year that I've been on the
So I
council.
think last year was one of the first years that they actually applied.
We allow
and then they-
we allow any nonprofit to apply for these grants, right?
Yes, they have to meet certain requirements, but yes.
All right.
But the,
I see no reason to table it.
well, I'm,
No, I didn't say,
not-
if you're referring to me, I didn't say table it.
my concern is, you know, I've been writing grants for over 20 years. You know, you read the directions and what it is that the grant is for, and if the grant is to serve a specific purpose, which is stated here, and on the application it says it's to fund events that benefit the community, the greater community, and have public benefits, and to pay performers' fees, you know, for an award ceremony, it doesn't meet that standard.
Well, then should we make them, all the venues, volunteer their venues for these two?
No, I'm stating specifically because of what they said, that it is to pay for performer fees, that it wasn't, you know, it doesn't state in there that it's to pay for the venue. It doesn't state also, so there's two parts. It's being used to pay performer fees, A, and the second part, which, you know, is that it's not providing a greater community public benefit. The money is not going back to, you know, helping, for example, the Pantages Theater has, you know, tickets, last-minute tickets for $25 for, you know, whoever can't afford to go to Pantages seat. And so they could do that. They could say some of this money is going to be used to subsidize people who want to go to Simi Valley Cultural Arts Center but can't afford it, or for low-income families, or for people who've never been there, something like that. Every other application had that in there. Not only did they say how they were spending the money, you know, to offset police costs or security or the venue, but they also stated how it goes back to help the community, whether it's scholarships or helping the Boys and Girls Club or the YMCA. And I don't see that either one of those is mentioned here. If it was, you know, not following the direct, it says on, you know, number 12, explain why this event should receive city support, and it says, you know, preferences will be given to fund events where event proceeds are used locally within Simi Valley and to fund events with greater community public benefits over events with lesser community public benefits. Just because you received a grant the prior year doesn't mean that you're entitled to receive a grant again. That's why you have to write the grant every year. and you have to, follow the directions of the grant in terms of what is the money being used for. And in this case, these are community grants that are supposed to benefit the community at large, and I just don't see that that's being met. That does not, it's not political in any way, it's just the way that the grant is written. So next
You're
year,
complaining about an omission?
they can
Because they
write the
didn't
grant.
write it right?
It does not meet the
Because without the
requirements of the
Cultural Arts
grant.
Center Foundation, there's no Cultural Arts Center. They're the ones that pick up the excess that the city needs them to pick up to fund the Cultural Arts Center. If they don't make their money payment to the city can't keep the Cultural Arts Center running. So it is a public good, because the Cultural Arts Center is for the public.
But they are supposed to be self-sustaining. It's supposed to be a self-sustaining
And they
performing arts
self-sustain
center.
through
We have a number of wonderful, talented artists from our elementary schools all the way through our high schools, and just adults who would love to donate their time, energy, and talents. I have paid to go to my daughter to concerts at Hillside, at Hollow Hills, at the Santa Susana, at Royal. I have gone to hear bands, to hear singers, to see musicals because of the level of talent that we have within the city. And I am positive that if you put it out there and ask for people who are, jazz artists or singers or magicians or, all the number of talented people that we have, that they would gladly donate their time to support the Simi Cultural Arts Center. And that's my concern is why are we as a city using taxpayer money to pay performance fees to local artists? That's what I don't understand.
I understand, and I'm having troubles with this, but I look at this list, and okay, so the Cultural Arts Center is paying their actors or performers, and they're going to perform at an event, which is a fundraiser. Okay, then you have on the same page the Kiwanis Club, and they're going to pay their roundup performers for the same purpose. And I see that it's one and the same. It's just where the money's going afterwards that we're not. It seems like the Cultural Arts Center is focused on the Cultural Arts Center. I do know they give back to the community in the form of training and what have you. And the Kiwanis, I don't know where all they distribute their money, but I know they're not for profit. And so they're paying those performers that they bring in so they can make money to then distribute. Let's look at the Chamber of Commerce. What do they do with their money?
Right, and that's why I read through every single application to see what the components were, and if it met the components of what is required to receive the grants and what is the intent of the grant. And the intent of the grant is to benefit the community at large, to have a public benefit. And including the street fair, it says that 40% of our vendors are local businesses and 25% are local nonprofit organizations on page 15. And so, it promotes local businesses, it promotes local nonprofits. I know that we have our own city, employees and services that are there as well at the street fair. So, there is a public benefit to it. And it's also a free event, the Simi Valley Street Fair. So.
That's not if you're putting a booth there.
Right, but to attend, anyone who wants to attend, it is free. It does not cost anything. And I know people who come from, around the area, other cities too, specifically because of our street fair. So every other, application had that. So I'm not saying they can't apply next year or in the next cycle, but I just don't see how it's meeting it right now.
My suggestion.
As written.
My suggestion would be that we move forward with this and that we discuss forming even an ad hoc committee, whatever, to take a look at the rules, guidelines that the committee is working under and see if we have it correct. Based on we've done it before, and I can't get a great separation between the Cultural Arts Center and the Roundup. Obviously, it's quite different in what they do, but I mean, they're hiring performers, both of them are.
But there's no public benefit for the Simi Valley Cultural Arts Center. It's nowhere in the application. I read it 5 times.
It goes
tried
to
to find
support the
where
foundation.
it benefited the public, where it said, hey, we're giving money to the Boys and Girls Club, or hey, we're helping low-income families, or hey, we're giving scholarship, and it's nowhere in there.
I think that's where.
Tell me if I'm missing a page.
Well, you're not missing a page.
Okay.
But I think that's where maybe we're not on the same page, how's that, is that I see, having been on the Cultural Arts Commission, I see where they're doing things that benefit the public, and that's an argument. Maybe it needs to be cleaned up, but I see where they're bringing in students and giving them training, and they benefit from that training, and that's very good for our community.
Mayor, if we award this without having any accountability in terms of how this money is being spent and how it benefits the community at large, then what's to say that next year someone else is going to apply and they're not meeting the requirements of what this grant money is intended for? And it is our job as elected officials to set policy in terms of how this money is being spent and is it being used for its intended purpose. That's what accountability and transparency is making sure that the money that we're giving out is being spent in the way in which the policy that we set forth is that we said that it was going to be used for, that's what we intended. And so it's nothing personal. It's just the way that it was written and what the requirements are of the grant. And trust me, I've written grants and I've gotten some and I haven't gotten some, and it's how you write it and whether or not you meet the requirements. And in this case, I just don't see that requirement is met.
Yeah, in my closing, the only thing I would say is we're probably very close to agreement, and I would like to just move it to where it's more of okay, let's take a look at this and tighten up the reins if necessary, but review what we're doing, and so we don't have this discussion again next time that we're given the voting on the committee's recommendation.
Now, Mr. Mayor, if I could, I move to select recipients recommended by the Special Event Support Review Committee to receive the 2020 Special Event Support Grants and authorize the interim city manager to execute grant contracts for those grants with recipients.
Second it.
Motion and second. Call for the vote. She recused herself.
So I abstained, or Trish abstained for her?
No.
Just leave it. I don't know.
Motion passes with Councilmember Loveno's voting no. Councilmember Kavanaugh recused.
Okay, number 3, Councilmember Luevanos.
Yes, I read through the report on the receipt of successor housing agency, and, I just wanted to make note that we received this money, a while ago, and we have yet to spend it. The fund balance is $4,846,000, which is meant to, make sure that we have housing that is accessible for our workforce. And, I've had discussion with several staff members about, what we could do and what options that we have, and it's very difficult to go to legislators who, are saying, how can we support and help you when we have money that we have not spent to provide affordable housing, to incorporate affordable units within residential developments, and it's just been sitting here for all these years. The last time that we spent any of this money for affordable housing was in December of 2015. And that was for the Affordable Housing Agreement with Coverdeo Economic Development. That was 5 years ago. That was for 31 units. And if we had a plan, a short and long-term plan in terms of how we're going to meet the housing needs of our workforce, of our teachers, of our police officers, of our office workers, of the people of our college graduates who come back and work here and want to live, not in their parents' house, but somewhere else. It is just very disheartening to me that we don't have a plan yet for how we're going to meet those housing needs, and we now find ourselves in the position that we're in because we have not spent that money. And I don't know if it's for lack of a plan, because I have yet to see one in terms of how we're going to spend this money. And if it's for lack of not having enough money, then we need to come up with a plan so that we can go to our state legislators and say, hey, we have this $4 million, but we have this project that's worth $10 million. We need the other $6 million. If that's the reason why we're not spending the money because we don't have enough, then that's something that we can go forward. But I've yet to see a plan of why we haven't spent this money in 5 years that we've been sitting on it, while we have homeless individuals that are living on the streets, while we have 3-generation households where we have parents that are, have their teenage children and are taking care of their elderly parents in the same household because there's not enough housing supply. And we also have business owners who want to come to Simi Valley, but there's no place for their workers to live. So I'm a little frustrated that we have this money and that it hasn't been spent for 5 years. So I don't know who to address this issue to or what plan we have so that we're not sitting on this money for another 5 years while we have, major housing needs in this community.
I think the appropriate way to do this is we need to look at the real question is on this report. Are we going to file this report or not? And then what you're bringing up is something that needs to be agendized. And that would be what I would recommend.
Okay, so a 9B motion?
I'm sorry?
Make a 9B motion? Is that what you suggest?
That'd be the time to bring it up, yes.
Okay. I will do that.
Okay, so that was 3, correct? Okay, number 6.
Yes, I just had a question. I know we're taking, I don't know if the police chief is still here. Yes, he is. I know the request is for a shotgun to be displayed with the vehicle that we have that's of the same time period. So the request is for the retention of shotgun for the purposes of display within the Department's Public Relations 1968 Dodge Polara, that the gun will be inoperable. I was just curious, like why have a gun, or what's the purpose, or do other police departments do this, or?
Well, it's a commemorative car, so to make it accurate, you have to have all the pieces included. So it just so happened that this one particular weapon came in, is going to be destroyed anyway, so we're just going to render it inoperable and then make those parts sort of.
So would it be inside the car or outside the car?
It's a prop it'll end up being a prop within the vehicle. So it'll be bolted to the, I'm assuming the dashboard, as they normally are. So it's a prop within a vehicle that we use for special events and for going out into the community.
Will it be like glued down, or can anyone just pick it up, or?
It's no different than a shotgun, it's in a regular police car's lock, so it has to have, you have to have a key.
Okay, so no one can access it?
Well, even if it could, it's inoperable, they can't fire a round, so.
But no one will access it, that's correct.
Okay, that was my concern, because, with all the shootings and everything that we've had, I just don't know if, it's the right time to be promoting guns.
It's no different than having your inside of a regular police car.
Yeah.
It's a loaded shotgun.
Well, that's why I wanted to ask, I saw that it was inoperable, I didn't know if it was just something someone could grab and play with, or if it's locked up, then that's a whole nother issue.
It's a police weapon, nobody can grab a police weapon.
Okay,
Okay, can we move to number 7?
yes. Okay, yes, this is the discontinuation water rate, and it talked about translation to different languages. And I know it mentioned English, Spanish, Tagalog, Chinese, but I was curious to know, because we do have a number of Middle Eastern residents, if there was any possibility of translating to Arabic as well. I don't know who would answer that question.
I should probably address you as the board of directors of the water district, but board member Luevanos. For this one, we are meeting the requirement of the state law, so 10% minimum. There is no plan to do additional languages beyond that. Obviously, it's a policy directive of your board.
We certainly can. It's not a big challenge to add one more language to it. So,
okay. I know we have a number of older residents that are Middle Eastern, and they speak Arabic, and to have parents ask the kids to translate, things get lost in translation all the time. So that was my only request. Thank you.
We can accommodate.
Thank you.
Okay, so we need a motion on 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, and 7.
I move adoption of those consent items.
As amended, do we need that?
Did we amend it?
wording 7 to add a different language.
You can make the amendment to add the language Arabic to the policy in that
I'll
resolution.
amend it to add that to the policy.
Okay.
Second.
Call for the vote.
Motion passes unanimously. Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, next item on the agenda is continued business, item 7A, second reading of ordinance number 1306. The reading of the ordinance is as follows. Second reading of ordinance number 1306, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Simi Valley approving zone change number ZS739 to change the zoning designation from industrial to residential moderate density, conditional zoning RMOD CZ, and adopting mitigated negative declaration for a 1.97 acre parcel located at southwest corner of Callahan Avenue and Alviso Street. Staff is available for questions.
I'm sorry? So it's just second reading, if we could have a motion?
Mr. Mayor, I recommend that ordinance 1306 be adopted.
Second?
Call for the vote. Thanks.
Motion passes unanimously. Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, the next item on the agenda is new business, item 8A, approval of funding for emergency work performed and planned at the Tierra Rejada landfill, and approval of a supplemental budget request. Ron Fuchiwaki is here for this presentation.
Good evening, Mayor and members of City Council. Ron's way too good-looking for this item, so he sent me. Of course, I'm Joe Deacon with the Public Works Department. Talking about the Tierra Rejada landfill. The Tierra Rejada landfill was operated by the County of Ventura from 1962 to 1972. The landfill was closed, and much of the land was dedicated to the Simi Valley, the Rancho Simi Recreation and Parks District, and some of the land was granted to the city. The landfill is located north of Tierra Rejada Road, is accessed by Llevo Ranchero Road. It is basically directly across the Arroyo Simi from the city's water quality control plant. In 1991, an abatement order was issued after a slope of the landfill failed. The city has been in a consortium since that time with 3 other agencies to maintain the closed landfill. Ventura Regional Sanitation District, the Rancho Simi Recreation and Park District, and the county are our 3 partners in the consortium. VRSD agreed to be the managing partner of the consortium, and therefore they take the actions, and the rest of us have the honor of making equal payments in part. Each agency at the time the consortium was formed contributed funds. Then a federal grant was granted to the site, which provided for sufficient funds for continued monitoring, routine maintenance, and reporting for nearly 20 or more years. Recently, after Ventura Regional Sanitation District realized that they had exhausted the grant funds and asked the consortium members to start paying for the annual expenses, staff brought to the council a request to authorize annual expenses, and the council agreed and authorized the city pay about $25,000 per year for routine work that's needed to maintain the site, to do testing that's required by the regulatory agencies, and to report those tests. On October 30th, 2019, the easy fire began, and it was directly across the arroyo where it started. It crossed the arroyo and burned the Tierra Alta landfill. The landfill was completely scorched. Once VRSD could access the site again after several days, they began emergency repairs, including restoring a gas collection and gas destruction system and clearing the drains. Over the months that followed, of course, there were rains in November and December and even in January, requiring VRSD to attend to the site following the rains in order to maintain the now denuded slopes. As water runs down, this is a very steep site. As water runs down the slopes, they need to be maintained in order to make sure a deep rut doesn't form that would cause another failure in the site. Along with the repair work that VRSD has performed, they investigated the site further, having basically a bare site with no vegetation, and did some testing to determine the soil fill over the trash at the site. VRSD is aware that a landfill essentially requires a 2-foot of cover over its site to meet regulations. However, in this case, this site was closed so long ago, it predated the modern requirements for closure requirements. So there's some interpretation by the regulator in this case. So VRSD met with the staff of the consortium members after measuring the soil level, let them know that money was being spent for emergency repairs, and also let us know that the soil was deficient over much of the site and that they would be reporting to the regulators as required, as they are a self-reporting agency. They would report to the regulators about the deficiencies and ask for further direction. Upon getting further direction from the regulators that a 2-foot of cover minimum was required over the entire site, VSD developed estimates and met with representatives asking for funding to make the emergency repairs to the site and restoring the 2 feet of cover to the site from each agency. VRSD itself took action to authorize its share of the funds on January 16th, and their board of directors did approve that authorization. Each agency's share, split equally 4 ways, is nearly $549,000. So approximately a $2.2 million expense for this, for the soil and the emergency repairs. Staff recommends the council authorize the expense to continue to protect the site from failure, which could result in a significant environmental damage to the Arroyo Simi. The funding would come from the sanitation fund. I'm here to answer any questions you may have. That concludes my report.
Questions of staff?
I've got a couple, if that's right. So if I understand, basically, there are 2 expenses. There's the fire expense, the damage that was done, and then basically restoration once to get it up to code or to make sure it's operating correctly. That was uncovered. So first of all, I know the city has fire insurance for structures. Is there any fire insurance that would cover a portion thereof? I mean, this was structural, this was pipes. Isn't there some kind of fire insurance that would help us with this obligation?
This wouldn't, it would not hit any deductible that we have, but we are looking at cost recovery through either FEMA or Cal OES to try and recover some of these costs with the 3 other agencies.
Okay.
What question? Do you know the determination of what caused the easy fire? Seems to me it was power lines.
I don't think a report has come out, but I think we've probably seen the video of a power line dropping and perhaps starting the fire. So there could be another avenue for us to recover some of this cost as well.
So I would like to suggest to staff to meet with the fire department, obtain the fire investigation report, determine who is the cause of the fire, and use our, not the county, but the city's cost recovery process to try recouping those costs. I have no idea if it's Edison or if it's a private line, whatever it may be. But if it started in that manner, those folks are responsible.
Okay, I'll make a note of it.
And Mr. Mayor, if I can ask, it looks like the Ventura Regional Sanitation District did the expense and they're billing everybody the quarter. Are you opposed if they file on the behalf of the consortium and then pass out the monies they get, or is that, I don't know if that might be an option considering, I didn't see it in the staff report, it looks like an obvious thing that they would try to recover money for the fire.
We can work cooperatively with the ERSD, and collectively, we're all going to try and recover these costs. We're all out. All four of us are out $539,000, so we're...
Yeah, we should...
We'll work cooperatively to try to recover the costs from SCE and as well as the other agencies.
And CAL FIRE would have that report also, investigation report.
Mayor, may I ask a couple questions?
Yes.
I received this letter from Resident Teresa Jordan, and I, too, am concerned about some of these questions, especially the concern about the health problems because of the methane gas. Are there any issues? I mean, we're not that far from Aliso. Many of our residents were impacted by that. So are there any issues now, or were there any issues then? I'm looking at liabilities, possible liability because of the fires, because of the leak, because of the failure of protection of the structures in place there, the safety structures. So has anyone reported any health issues, or?
No, we haven't had any health issues, and the Regional Water Quality Control Board inspects the site on an annual basis, so they would be tracking any complaints as well. And I think the methane coming off, any gas coming off it is minimal, but it does have to be addressed with the system that unfortunately was destroyed with the fire.
And just so you know, the way the gas extraction system works, it's actually a vacuum system, so it pulls air out of the landfill in order to capture that methane and then flare it off. So a week or a couple of weeks that the landfill did not have that collection system going, there's some storage capacity within the landfill structure itself that it's not like it's jetting off the site on its own. It has to be pulled out. So I'm not sure it has the same concern as Aliso did, where there was a pressurized gas system that was going off. But
Okay, and there's a question here as to where the Tierra Rajada landfill documents are kept, because it's not city, it's not county.
VRSD is the operating partner, and they maintain all records on the landfill.
Okay, so if a resident wanted to know where those documents were kept, that's who they would contact?
Yes.
That's correct.
Okay. I'm just curious, and I don't know if either one of you can answer this question, or maybe even Mayor Mashburn, what is the fire protection priority? Because there was this landfill and there were all these smoldering fires that were happening and they kept going for a while. So, and on the news, I, like other residents, was seeing, 5, fire units that were dispatched to the Ronald Reagan Library while we had a resident lose their home. So I'm curious, what is the priority? And I don't know if any of you can answer this question in terms of protection, because this is a lot of, damage that was caused, over $2 million of damage to this landfill. So I don't know if that is a priority or not a priority, and I don't know who can answer that question.
I would venture to guess that because there are no structures here, it's only piping. This was probably considered brush clearance by the fire district, and it wasn't a priority for putting out the fire in this particular area. There were no structure protection that they would, it's just piping that would come out of the ground.
And also to clarify, I don't think it was $2 million in damage. It's $2 million in repairs. It was maybe $500,000 or $600,000, $700,000 in repairs, but the balance is what they discovered because the brush got burnt off. Now they realize, wait a minute, there's things going on underneath here that we didn't know about. So I think, as I read the document,
that's a good point. You are absolutely correct.
Right, we're having to upgrade to current standards.
We're making it better because of the fire. It will end up being
Correct. We've realized that the now required 2 foot of cover was not on site, and that needs to be retained. That is a bulk of this cost, quite frankly.
Yes.
Like 3/4, I think.
Yeah.
And that's not caused by the fire.
So will that have more protection in case of future fires in that area?
I doubt it. To answer your first question, typically, you just think life and property. That's the very quick answer. And then you have to look at, that was right in the area where the fire started, and it was moving quickly with winds carrying it to structures and the ranches on the other side. So I'm sure that's what they did, is prioritized where it was going, not necessarily that area where it had started. And their interest is, again, life and property. And at some point, they would have, if they knew it was there, that's one key thing. But if it was buried with brush, they didn't even realize it was there. It wasn't something to protect. If you go into an avocado orchard that has all those plastic lines, they will protect those also once they have enough equipment on homes and what have you, because that is property, that's valuable property, and they know it, and they'll protect those. My guess is they probably didn't know this existed, and so it was not a priority based on that.
And I'm asking because, we did have, a family who lost their home in the fire, and, when I asked, it's like, well, no one knew that that the building was there. There were 2 homes that burned and, 2 families that were displaced. So, is there a plan or is there signage or something for the future? Because, the point of, going through these experiences is to learn and to do better for the next time so that, we can protect, homes and these kinds of prevent environmental disasters that would impact our residents. So, I'd like to know if VRSD, or if we can ask VRSD if they can put signage so that, other firefighters know, hey, there's something there we need to protect, or does that make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense,
wanna
and it
be
might be part
preventative.
of the rehab of that area to where they'll fence it even, I don't know, and clear the brush from that area. And I don't know if that's part of the plan or not, but that would, especially when you're dealing with the PVCs that we have, that makes sense, because it's a large loss.
We can certainly work with the RSD to have some notification. Fencing, I think the priority is for keeping a wildlife corridor through there, so the fencing may not be realistic, but we can certainly work with them about some signage that would make persons aware of what's on that site.
And especially if we have visiting firefighters from other, agencies who are not familiar with the area, they would have no way of knowing what's there. And I'm thinking of, where the Boy Scouts do Camp Bree, over the waste management, and we know because we're local, but other people that are visiting, other firefighters that may come and help us, in an emergency, they wouldn't know unless there's a sign. So, I'd like for there to be some sort of, we're going to pay $500,000, for there to be some sort of signage so that in the future we can prevent it, or there could be more protection of it.
And I would guess that the fire department has mappings of different areas and types of things that they would have.
No, they definitely do, and we can request them to put special notice on their mappings. They're all computerized now, and they have what, I can't remember, it's been so long, but tactical problems that are numbered, and that can come up, and they have that on their screen now, or before we went to books. But that's not something that we should ignore. That's something that would be very easy to make them aware of it. That way, if they're going into that area, it'll show on the screen as a tactical problem.
And there was also, I'm sorry, one more question. There was a request by a resident, that there be notification, when things like this happen because of the air quality issues that impact so many of our residents with respiratory issues. And so, if there's, notice that can be given in some way, whether it be a social media or, press release or whatever. I was in the ER with an asthma attack along with a dozen other residents during the fire. So I understand that respiratory, ailment concern. And so, if there's any way that we can also let people know, because smoldering fires are still producing something that's going to the air, it's still producing some sort of, contaminant or pollution that is going there, especially if it's coming from a landfill. We're not aware exactly what those contaminants are, but I would like for there to be some sort of system that we can communicate with our residents those concerns.
We can do that, sure.
Thank you.
Fire department. Okay, we need a motion.
I move to approve funding for emergency work performed and planned at the Tierra Rajada landfill and approve a supplemental budget request.
Second.
Call for the vote.
Motion passes unanimously. Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, next item on the agenda is item 9A, City Council Member Reports.
Okay. Just going to start with the Lane.
Thank you. This was actually a time of learning for me these past 2 weeks. Just to touch on a few things. January 14th, I did attend the grand opening for Boot Barn, and so appreciative that they're in our community. That was a great event. On Wednesday, January 15th, I actually attended a SCAG webinar where they discussed the report or draft ER, et cetera, that's coming out, the plan that is being produced, and actually our comment period just ended, but the final draft planning for SCAG is going to be coming out in April, and so it was very interesting to learn about the processes and the different elements that will be making up that area plan. On Thursday, January 16th, I attended the Simi Valley Ed Foundation Teacher of the Month and want to commend Tracy Spohr for being from Catherine Elementary, who received that honor from the Simi Valley Ed Foundation. On Friday, January 17th, I was able to briefly attend the 6th Annual Simi Valley Youth Town Hall that was held at the Ronald Reagan Presidential Library, and I want to commend Kristen Tignac and those who worked with her to make that such an exciting and meaningful event. I understand it was well covered in the Acorn and other newspapers, and even the photos that were used from that event were taken by our youth, and so it truly was youth-sponsored and youth advertised and youth reported, which is great. And I did learn a few things. One of the things that I took away as they talked about, it was all about the problems with vaping and smoking, et cetera, among our youth. I took away the description that vaping is very much like an aerosol. People tend to think of it as just as a mist, but truly it is like spraying an aerosol can into your lungs, and all of those elements that you would feel if you took an aerosol spray in your hand is what is and can be caught in your lungs, and just as we are aware of just how it is affecting our youth and the deaths that occurred, et cetera. But it was just really well done, and I appreciated that event. I will tell you that the bulk of this past week for me was attending from Tuesday, January 21st through Friday, January 24th, was attending the League of California Cities New Mayor and Council Members Academy. And I had many different takeaways from that for myself, besides learning how to do my job correctly after I've been doing it for almost a year, but it was good to learn many things. I learned there was much discussion about the ADUs, the accessory dwelling units, and how the new law might be affecting every community, and so I hope that we are really aware of and mindful of how that might be affecting us. It was interesting to learn how the League, what they're supporting and what their concerns are. Obviously, they are very much tied up with local control and desiring that cities can maintain that control. So, for example, they are fighting SB 50 and some of the regulations that would impose on communities. I thought it was interesting, several speakers talked about their concern and opposition to pension obligation bonds, and they had other suggestions, and so I know we're going to be looking at that, but I thought it was very interesting that was their position. And of course, we'll be talking about that more. One thing I took from the planning, and I share this with our planning department, but the whole session we talked about planning, and I'm going to quote, "Mixed use is the ranch dressing that is applied to poor planning." I don't know if I agree with that, but it does have its place, and it should be treated as salt and pepper, not pasta. So I take away that bit of planning information that I took away. But anyway, it was very interesting. And then Friday, January 24th, I had the honor of attending the Simi Valley Ed Foundation Lou Roth Awards Dinner, and my congratulations to the 7 outstanding recipients who do so much for education in our community. And that concludes my report.
Councilmember Lou Evanos.
On Thursday, January 16th, I had a briefing for the Task Force on Homelessness, which will be coming up soon in a few weeks. I'm sorry, I do not have the date with me, but I encourage you all to attend. We will be looking at some of the funds that we have and how we can use that to address our homelessness issue, and possibly having an emergency parking lot in the city for those of our residents who are currently facing homelessness. On Saturday, January 18th, I attended the March for Justice for All in Ventura County, and that was in Ventura. It was kind of a version of Women's March, but it was for everybody. And so I was happy to attend on behalf of the city of, representing the city of Simi Valley, along with a number of elected officials and community advocates from all over Ventura County. So that was nice to get to see that and see so many of our residents go out and fight for rights for all who need them. On Monday, January 20th, I was invited to actually hold the banner for the Martin Luther King Jr. event in Oxnard. It was a beautiful celebration. There was choirs, there was gospel choir, there was food, there were community advocates there, and it's important that we honor Martin Luther King Jr.'s dream with a day of service, which is what I spent most of the weekend doing. So, and it was nice to be there with others who advocate on behalf of our community, especially our communities of color. On Wednesday, January 22nd, I attended the State of Our Simi Schools presentation in the brand new district headquarters for Simi Valley Unified School District with Jason Poplinski, our superintendent, and let us know what the state of our schools are and where we are and where we need to go and how we need to move forward and how we're meeting the needs of our students. Many families are attracted to our city because of our school district, so it's really important that we have that. If you missed it, if you were not there, I highly recommend you go to the Simi Valley Unified School District website, and they did upload it, and the recording of the State of Our Schools District is on the website, so do check it out. And if you get a chance to go to the district headquarters, they're beautiful. They're absolutely gorgeous, and they have a recording studio in there, and they have analog and digital and sound stages, and we are ready to work with the school district so that any film crew or production crew that wants to come can come and film there. They can film there, they can film here in the city and at the district headquarters, so I'm really excited about that partnership. And on Friday, January 24th, I too attended the Simi Valley Education Foundation Lou Roth Awards Dinner, and I want to congratulate all of those who work in our schools, not just those who got awards, but everyone who makes sure that everyone in our schools is served equitably, fairly, and so that we can have a brighter future for everyone in our city. So thank you to all of you who work in our schools and technical career centers and barber centers and all the different vocational technical ed that we have in Moore Park College. Thank you for all the work that you do. You guys are amazing. Thank you.
Councilmember Kavanaugh.
Thank you. One of the first things I did during the week, I actually visited a couple times, was the Seroptimus display at Adventist Health Simi Valley, Walking in Her Shoes. That was a wonderful display. I hope everyone got up there to see it. Unfortunately, I was visiting my sister over 10 days in the ICU, so I saw it quite a few days. But it was a great turnout. It was a wonderful event. I know a good friend of mine is from the Camarillo Seroptimus, and she was up here looking at it because now they want to do it in Camarillo. So thank you to Adventist Health Simi Valley and to the Seroptimus Club for doing that. On Thursday, January 16th, I attended the EDC Economic Development Collaborative at Ventura County Board meeting. It's our annual meeting, so we have an actual meeting. We elect our new officers, and then we have a dinner and a mixer. So there was a lot of good things to do there. City Manager, I'm looking at you going, Brian. City Manager Gabler was there also. And we met quite a few new people. It was very interesting. Met some nice gentlemen from Southern California Edison, so now we have another in there. So we made sure to get his card. Let's see. Again, I spent most of the weekend with my family. That included my day of service was at the hospital on Martin Luther King Day, so I felt that that was good. But I did see a lot of wonderful people posting different things that they were doing in service for that day and different ideas, so that was nice to see. On Thursday, January 23rd, I had the pleasure of attending the 10th anniversary, along with the mayor, of East Coast Pizza in the Regal Center. They have been so instrumental in supporting our community in multiple things, so I really wanted to make a point of being there and thanking Ashley and Neil for all that they do, and they have really good food, too. So they have great pizza and great sandwiches. I love the focaccia bread, or whatever their special bread is. It's just wonderful. And on Friday, January 24th, I also attended the Lou Roth Awards for the Simi Valley Education Foundation. And all 7 winners were wonderful, and all the other teachers and such were there. But, I am going to commend Principal Sean Rumble at Hollow Hills because I'm an alumni. And the office manager at Sinaloa, Julie Orm, because I'm an alumni there. So it was kind of nice to kind of cheer those people on. But the Education Foundation did a great job in recognizing each of the people and explaining why they were being recognized and giving a nice history, so that when you didn't know the person, you felt like you did at the end of it. So that was wonderful. I had a great time, and I was able to hand out certificates for the mayor, and that was very nice to congratulate every one of them. So that's the end of my report, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Judge.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On Tuesday, January 14th, I too attended the Boot Barn grand opening. If you're not aware of it, Boot Barn opened over there on the plaza between Home Depot and Walmart, where Office Depot used to be. They took the vacant space there. So now we have a Boot Barn in Simi Valley, which is good news for a lot of folks. On Wednesday, January 15th, I attended, along with the mayor, the Veterans Task Force on Homelessness here in the community room at City Hall. On Friday, January 17th, I attended the Simi Valley Annual Youth Town Hall, and I'm very proud of our Youth Council. I wanted to thank them for the great job they did putting that on. It was very informative, and it was very well done. I also want to thank Kristen for her work with the Youth Council. I, too, went through the Walking in Her Shoes display that was at the Venice Health on Friday with my wife. We walked through that, looked at all, and listened to all the stories from the traffic people. It was very moving. Thank you to the Optimist Club for doing that. From Monday until Saturday, January 20th through the 25th, I attended a trade show in Las Vegas, so I was out of town. I wanted to say I was also briefed on the Task Force on Homelessness today before our meeting, and that's my report.
Thank you. Myself, on Tuesday, January 14th, I attended the grand opening of the Boot Barn. Nice store. On Wednesday, January 15th, I was at the Veterans Task Force on Homelessness, which was chaired by Ryan Valencia. He is the aide or director, I think his title is, to Christy Smith. He chaired the meeting, and it was determined that they need to come up with a business plan, which would be very helpful, and trying to pull all of the ideas together on what the veterans would like to do here in Simi Valley. Thursday, the 16th, I too went to the Simi Valley Ed Foundation Teacher of the Month, and I came across a gentleman from STS Education, invited him to come to the presentation with me at Catherine Elementary, and it turned out to be a home run because he gave the recipient a new Chromebook computer.
Oh.
That was Michael Navarro, excuse me. On Friday, January 17th, that might be political. I don't want to discuss that. looking. Thursday, January 23rd, had a meeting with Cabrillo Development regarding the potential for some low-income housing here in Simi Valley, and that seems to, I think we'll be hearing about that in the near future. Also did the 10-year anniversary celebration of East Coast Pizza, and I agree with what was said earlier about Ashley and Neil and everything they do for the city. On Friday, January 24th, I got to take a drive down to Irwindale, and I went to Edison's Government Advisory Panel. I accepted, when asked if I would attend and become part of that panel, I accepted and went down there. We talked a lot about PSPS and the effects it has on our city. And that's where you're shutting down power because of potential fire weather or existing fire weather. And there was a lot of talk, different areas. It was mainly elected people from different areas of the region. I'll pass this out. One of the steps that Edison is taking to help reduce the fire hazard is most of their power lines that are elevated, the higher ones typically, are not insulated. And those are the ones that are most dangerous for causing fires. And so Edison's working with some company, have a sample to pass around. And this shows a new line that is insulated. Now, I did notice, having some experience with these lines, this is a pretty small line, and there's some great big ones. And when you consider that they have about 50,000 miles of lines, it's going to be a while before we'll see this put everywhere, but at least they're working on it. I don't know where. The other thing, they may be aware of some grants that I'll talk to staff about. And then they have some opportunities for fleet electrical charging stations and also charging stations for new apartment complexes, all things that they're involved with and helping get these units in operation. So I have this material. I'll make copies and pass it out to you. But it was I thought it was a worthwhile meeting. Today, I spent a couple hours at Sinaloa Junior High School. I had received numerous letters from the students over there, and I was looking at all these letters, and I've gone, these are all valid questions they're asking, and they deserve a response, and I thought, this is going to take forever to respond to all these letters. So we called the school and asked if I could come speak to them, and that's the way we handled it. And I was very surprised at the number of students that came out. Good questions. And I think that what the students in the Sinaloa Junior High are, it's middle school now, right? It's not junior high. What they were interested in, number one, was, I would say, number one questions were regarding homelessness in the city and what we could do to improve it. And I tried to explain to them what we are doing and what we have not done, but we would like to do. And we had very good discussion. And the other area of concern that the students have is pretty much everything west of where we changed the speed limits on Royal. They're concerned with all the speeding and traffic accidents, of course, mainly on the west end down by their school, but they talked a lot about some of the side streets and the way people are avoiding making left-hand turns or creating problems other places. But I was really impressed with, they knew what they were talking about, and they see a problem with speeding near their school. And it was good to talk to them about that and hear what they had to say. The other area, something that I brought up not too awfully long ago, that they brought up, and I encouraged them to keep bringing it up, is if you recall, we talked a little bit about better lighting systems for our cross guards when they're carrying these stop signs. And I just look in my mind of these bicyclists that have those little tiny red lights on the back of their bike that you can see for miles and miles and miles, and how bright they are and how cheap they are. And I think we need to do a better job of making sure that our crossing guards have the necessary notification, lit materials to help protect them. And now I got a whole bunch of students behind me on that, so look out. And we have a force, and we'll be out encouraging that. And I do hope in the future, the gentleman that we're talking about, the speeding areas and some of the stuff that the traffic engineers will have to deal with, that we'll also in the near future start looking at these lit crosswalks, lit intersections that we see in other communities that really seem to stand out and protect pedestrians and our students as they go to school. That's the end of my report. Next item, 9B, council member request for future city council agenda items.
Mayor, I have two requests.
Yes.
I request a staff report on the possibility of buying out Golden State Water.
I would modify that. Well, I think it's just a general report about Golden State and the relationship would be helpful. I mean, they are such a large institution, but anyway, I just think general ways about we can interact with them would be helpful.
Comments from?
We can come back with some general information, and I know, was it, Ron, was it Ojai that bought?
Ojai bought it up.
Yeah, so we can come back with some information and just kind of get the discussion going. We'll start from there.
Yeah, and if that could include information about Ojai and how
Yeah.
they bought out Golden State Water, that would be greatly appreciated. The second request for 9B that I have, Mayor, is, having a plan for developing affordable housing. What is our plan for the over $4 million in funds that we have been sitting on for the past 5 years to address the issue of homelessness and affordable housing? What is our plan for that funding, and how do we move forward? Because, we do have means to obtain other funding, but it's difficult to ask for more funding if we haven't used the funding that we have. So that is my other request.
Okay, do we have a second for that request?
Actually,
I don't think we need a second on the first one. That's a staff report.
well, I'm not sure what the full, the motion is, am I understanding your request is how to use those funds, recommendations for using those funds?
Right, yeah, what is the plan for that, for the use of those funds? What is the most efficient or best
Or what
use
are
of those funds?
alternatives maybe would be, because
It's been sitting there for, the last time we did something with this in 2015, so.
But my thought is, as you were brought the topic, for instance, I know we're discussing doing a parking lot possibly for homeless people in their cars. I thought, well, maybe those funds could be used for sanitation and anyway, and lighting or whatever.
I would request that you first sit down with the city manager, because I've had discussions with the city manager regarding affordable housing, workforce housing, and I recently talked to a developer even. And so there are things not way in the process, but there's certainly items to be discussed that are being looked at.
I just don't want another 5 years to go by with this money just sitting there.
I'd be happy to put together a memo to the council, let them know what current uses are, what some proposed uses are, and some projects that we're planning and working with the housing group. We could start from there and give you some information on what we see, and because this is when some money's gone, it's gone. So we're trying to be judicious about how we spend it, but let us start with a commentary on what the current uses are and some of our proposed uses. And then if we can always bring that back to the council for a full discussion.
Okay. Okay, tonight we're going to adjourn. Almost, I'm sure everybody's aware of the helicopter tragedy that happened just south of us. And we're going to adjourn tonight in memory of the victims of that crash. And that is John, Carrie, and Alyssa what is it? Altabelli. I'm sorry that I didn't do their name correctly. And Kobe and Gianna Bryant. And I think all of you realize what a person Kobe was and what an impact that he's had on not only this nation, but this state in particular, and how many people follow that gentleman, and what a loss that is. Sarah and Peyton Chester, Christina Mauser, and Ara Zobayan, all passed away in that helicopter accident. Also, a name that if you've been in this town very long that you'll recognize, Mr. Adrian Murphy. He bought lots of property out here back in the 50s and has been selling it off a little bit at a time for many, many years, and owned almost all of the industrial property over off of Easy Street. And Mr. Murphy passed away. So with that, meeting's adjourned.
Oh.